Hello, everyone. Welcome to the distribution group conversation. I'm DJ. I'm a senior engineer on the distribution team and filling in as interim manager. And we have several other members of the team here on the call. In the agenda doc, we have linked to the slides. And so if anyone has any questions they want to raise to the team right away, feel free to jump in now, ask a question. Otherwise, I'll maybe highlight a few things. So, anyone have anything they wanted to shout out to the team right away? And if not, I will go ahead and just highlight some of the things from the slide. So on the sixth slide, we call out the help charts, our accomplishments for the past 2 months. So some of the things that the distribution team has been working on include we got support for the new beta Elasticsearch indexer that GitLab's using. We have support for that in the charts. So that was added in. We've created a Bootstrap script for the Helm charts for booting up an EKS cluster. So we've already had one for GKE. We created one for EKS. So we're working towards also having EKS be part of our CI runs as well for all the changes going into the charts. So that's going in very soon. And we also had quite a few changes going recently into the charts revolving around support for the Google Cloud Platform, support for the Redis memory store, the Cloud SQL, and the Google Cloud Storage. So we had changes coming in there from the community as well as from partners, and recently related to that, we also have an updated GKE marketplace entry that just went out. So those are some of the highlights. I'll just head over back to questions, and Sid, I see you had a question. Do you want to vocalize that?
Yeah. Hey, how's my sound?
A little quiet.
This should be better.
Yep. Yeah, sounds good.
So the Elasticsearch, it's added to our Helm charts. That's pretty cool. So that works by default. Are we also adding it to Omnibus? I think not. Grafana, are we adding that to the Helm charts? Are we adding that to Omnibus? And Vault, I saw plans to add it to the Helm charts, but not to Omnibus. What are you thinking about that?
So for Elasticsearch, the new beta indexer for Elasticsearch actually went into Omnibus before it went into the charts. So that new indexer is already there and shipped with Omnibus. The addition of it to the charts was a follow-up to get it working there, where in the charts we weren't able to use the previous one. The new one is able to use Giddily for indexing. So prior to being able to use the new one, we weren't able to provide any Elasticsearch support in the charts. So that's kind of why we called it out here. In terms of Grafana, that is also already shipped in Omnibus. The monitor team has been working on that, but there's several improvements to that going forward. And at the moment, I don't think we have, at least it's not on the roadmap to include it in the charts, as far as I've seen. But I imagine that would be something that would make sense, of course. But it's not currently something we've logged or taken a look at.
And we haven't officially planned that one yet. We need to scope out what the requirements are and the impact that would have as an optional feature. They do maintain their own chart, so it's possible that we could pull in their charts. We have to see whether or not we can automatically integrate the existing Grafana with the Prometheus that we integrate, and then tie all of that together with OAuth through the charts.
So I'm trying to summarize. Grafana is part of Omnibus, not planned for the chart. Vault is planned for the chart, not planned for Omnibus. Elasticsearch, I'm not super clear on.
So for Vault, I don't know that it's planned for the chart either at this point. So we have had plans. We do have issues open to look at it in both the charts and the omnibus, but I believe they're on hold in both. In the omnibus, we've been waiting, basically waiting on Rails updates in order to instead focus first on secret management and making use of the new features coming into upstream Rails in regards to that.
And can you explain a bit Elasticsearch? Is it like never part or something? Is it part of the chart? If I install the chart, is it part of that or not?
So the indexer is part of Omnibus and the chart, but the Elasticsearch itself is not part of either one at the moment. If that's more what you were asking.
I think it's really important for us to kind of start talking about the indexer when we refer to the indexer, say the Elasticsearch indexer, not Elasticsearch, because I think it's pretty confusing to say like it's part of Elasticsearch, part of the chart.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Right, that's a key one, and that's why I put down that we should definitely make sure we talk about which one. The Elasticsearch, they actually have a chart. However, a large deployment is required for that, and there's a lot of back-end understanding of how everything actually deploys. And that's one of the biggest reasons we haven't decided to actually deploy Elasticsearch as a service, either as part of the charts or as part of Omnibus right now, is the sheer amount of orchestration that's required, number of nodes, and the backing resources.
So we're not adding Elasticsearch to the chart anytime soon because it needs multiple, but not adding Elasticsearch service to the charts anytime soon because it needs lots of nodes.
It needs a lot of nodes. It needs a lot of disk. It needs a lot of RAM. It's very, very resource heavy.
Cool. And are we planning Grafana for the chart? How do we feel about that?
We have not officially put it on the roadmap at all. I believe there may be an open item for an RFP or a proposal. We can look into it. There is an existing chart that we could possibly integrate. But as I said, we need to look into what its requirements are, the impact on users, and how we can work with that chart to see if we can automatically integrate OAuth.
Yeah, the other thing to bring up with Grafana is currently the implementation in Omnibus is being led by the monitor team, and it's just the integration points into the Omnibus that we're heavily reviewing and testing. That right now that's being led by being done by Ben on that team at the moment.
Cool, thanks.
DJ, I think I'm next. In slide 4, I think I answered my own question by a bit of research, but I thought I'd ask anyway. The new process for engaging distribution with support, it's fair to say that also includes customer success?
Yeah, essentially anytime you need to engage or want to engage one of the distribution engineers in a call with a customer, that new documented process is the way to go. We like to have an issue open so we can default to tackling the issue or having multiple people look at it asynchronously first. So the issue, it's documented in the link on that page, but the issue should include links to the resources necessary for us to come up to speed ahead of time. But also it provides us a way to make it visible what our engineers are working on. And we also make use a bit of the time tracking in issues to see after the fact how much time our engineers are spending on these on the calls.
Yeah, no, I think the process is, I'm glad you folks have documented it because I know that I felt bad in the past stealing Jason's time for a customer. So I'm glad that it's documented and that time can be tracked. Is there some kind of a lead time that should be required or recommended for these things? Like between the time of filing an issue and asking for help on a particular call, what kind of time frame should there be in there?
I think we definitely want a lead time, but of course, like especially when dealing with support, emergencies are emergencies. For example, we still like to have the the issue, but sometimes for an emergency, for example, the issue might come in after the fact, so we can document what went on and add the spend on it. But I would say, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know, the rest of the team might have other opinions, but for non-emergencies, I think we'd prefer to have, around the 48-hour mark probably.
Okay. I will pass this on to the rest of the customer success folks who may not be on this. Thank you.
Is that so? Is that lead time? So being that you're asking and planning to pass it on, is that an important enough thing to document? Probably, I guess, right?
I think it might be, yeah, because I mean, I know some folks are, maybe I can get a call with distribution tomorrow, but obviously, yeah. Yeah, if it could be documented, that would certainly, I think, stop any confusion or stop people from making unreal expectations of you folks.
Yeah, the reason why I say something like 48 hours instead of 24 hours is it gives me the opportunity to see it coming in and perhaps manage it a bit, for example, rather than it just ending up being assigned to an engineer and me seeing it last minute before they actually end up going on a call or something like that, depending on what time it came in.
Yeah, perfectly understandable. Thank you.
And as DJ said, there are occasionally extenuating circumstances like customer outage where, yeah, that's an emergency. We're totally going to jump on that as best we can. But we still want the process to be followed in the end, so we have a trail and everything that we need for that. So, yeah, there are occasions when we can circumvent that lead time, but it will not be a general rule.
No, that's fair. And Jason, you've been amazing helping out all the folks in customer success with all your Kubernetes and Helm chart expertise. So I'm glad this is documented so we can better track your time on when you help us out.
Thank you.
Sid, you had another question.
Yeah, thanks. GitLab is composed of a lot of different services, and when you install GitLab, you're not quite that. Like you still have to do other stuff, Elasticsearch, Grafana, the registry, the container registry, the Maven registry. I want to I don't have a clear overview of what works automated and what you have to do yourself.
Yeah, so in terms of Omnibus, I think it looks like maybe you probably already have an idea of, based on what you're already saying, that the Rails application kind of is there by default, and everything else you have to turn on. So we have Rails and Prometheus and everything that supports those on by default, and everything else you have to kind of go in and configure and turn on. In the case of the charts, it's mostly based off the same approach with the additions that we added. Anything that was more part of our idea to production story when we're starting the charts may have got turned on. So in the case of the charts, registry is turned on by default, for example, and like we include a GitLab runner in the chart by default. Are two examples of additions. Other than that, I think, other than those two additions, I think it's the same services that are on. We also happen to actually, in the charts, we include a MinIO just to have everything done in object storage. But for production use, we want people to swap that MinIO out with more production ready, either their own managed MinIO or S3 or GCS, for example. But those are the main differences in services. Basically it's meant to have what Omnibus has, plus a few more that were ideal for idea to production, and met that story really well. Other than the different services, the big difference in terms of what you get after you install it is just in terms of how many of those services are running. So in the charts, we default it to being somewhat redundant in the number of pods it's running. So there's already more than one unicorn pod running, and it already has an autoscaler on it, so that it will scale up if it's being hit with a lot of resources, is the kind of the bigger difference between what you end up with if you just install a Omnibus package and when you end up with if you install the chart.
Thanks for that. In Omnibus, does like the registry for Maven work out of the box? Do you know that? Maven, NPM, that kind of stuff.
Packages
does.
is configured out of the box with a MinIO, and you can disable all of these services by simply setting enabled true for them, and it will turn it off across the board.
I think Sid was asking about in Omnibus though.
Oh, maybe I missed something.
So object storage isn't there by default, but I'm pretty sure the packages are turned on by default. The package registry support, but I'm actually not sure off the top of my head.
I think so. It's enabled by default in GitLab.yaml file. So I assume in Omnibus packages should be enabled by default too.
Yeah, that would be the case. Thanks, Dimitri.
Yeah, and I'm kind of repeating. There's a bit of overlap between all these, between like how hard is it to add it to an installation, what is manual work, and what is the timeline to address the limitations of the chart. So I'm sorry about that, but I wonder a bit, and I've looked a bit at the issues, but for GitLab pages, do we have a timeline to address the NFS limitations?
For that one, I actually have to find the issues. That's not a limitation of the charts per se. That's a limitation of pages itself.
So the epic is, so it's probably on the backlog. So that's issue 109, I think, under 6. I pasted that. If anyone else in the company wants to chime in, why it's just going to take a while. Maybe there's no why. Cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of the other ones in Geo, we're starting on it right away here. And then in terms of the in-cluster HA database, we are looking for 12.0, as Jason had written down here, to bring in the updated upstream chart, which brings in more HA capability. It's still the intent is still not the intent, but the expectation is that still won't be a great experience unless you've come in with a better storage solution to back it, or so it's really the one we ship with the chart really still isn't our recommendation for production. At the moment, just to elaborate on that a little bit, I don't know that we're aware of like a standardized solution for that. I think there are a lot of companies in that space that have solutions they're offering customers. So it's possible that customers might be running those solutions in Kubernetes. But as far as we've seen, we don't have a clear one that we can ship by default necessarily.
Right.
Sorry, I lost track.
It's come a long way from where it was when we started the work on the charts and where Postgres and really any stateful set was at that time. We've actually been communicating directly with the developers of the Postgres and Redis charts upstream to be able to better meet our needs and understand the customer workloads that we actually have. So we've seen a lot of things actually come to fruition since meeting them at KubeCon in Seattle in December.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think apart from that, the work with Crossplane to use the managed database service that every hypercloud has, I think that's also really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And we continue to follow up with that, and I'm watching their developments as they have them. They're making progress, but we still have some future work to do on that.
Cool. What do you think? Yeah, obviously it's out of our hands, but is this a question of weeks or months or quarters?
Due to heads down that I've had in the last couple of weeks, I can't actually actively tell you that what we're looking at for cross-plane support. I would assume at least a quarter.
Makes sense.
Yes. So
Thanks.
if you look at their roadmap, they have on their roadmap even they have GitLab support, but it's not on their they're not actively looking at it at the moment. It's on a future release that they're working on.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, and for the final one listed here, the smart card authentication, that was a recent addition to GitLab and Omnibus that we did actually do a spike in an attempt to implement it in the charts, and we ran into limitations with the Nginx ingress controller that we still haven't found a good solution for. Essentially, at this point, we have logged an issue in the Rails code base, in our Rails, in GitLab CE EE, that would provide us an alternative option by allowing us to use a different domain for the smart card authentication. Right now, you're only allowed to use a different port on your GitLab domain, but the Nginx ingress mostly just likes to open port 80 and port 443, and any additional ports you open come with a lot of caveats that have been interfering there. So we still have it as a follow-up issue to continue working on that. But currently we were not able to ship it, and it's so listed as a limitation.
Cool. So right now the limitations of the chart is basically, this is what's not in that's what's in Omnibus, but not in the chart. What do you think of adding things like the Elasticsearch service? Like when you install GitLab, you still have to do XYZ. So I understand we can solve it, but I still think it's kind of a thing we want in the chart at some point. So what if we don't make it a diff with Omnibus, but we have two lists of limitations? One for Omnibus, one for the chart, that lists kind of our ambition. Like these are the things that we still aspire to do.
I think a rewording might be better. Instead of saying, limitation in comparison to, the limitations of the chart are actually listed because those are things that are a part of the total GitLab application suite that we can't do, right? We're looking to improve those. We have roadmap items for a lot of them, but they're not specifically, the Omnibus can, but we can't, or vice versa. These are things that would make the entire experience better for sysadmins and users, etc., that we simply aren't able to do.
Yeah, maybe I agree. It's not really a limitation. It doesn't feel like that. I think we don't have to go so far, but maybe it's good to say like, hey, this is like what you manually have to do. And then we list all the different things, all the different components of GitLab. And we basically say, hey, this is automatic, this is manual. And we link to the relevant pieces.
I think there could be better communication there, because some of these we actually have like a pretty decent story for, and some of them we don't. Like, for example, the Elasticsearch service, while it does require a lot of resources for their existing chart, there is an existing chart that's quite easy to use. So it's like there is already a pretty good like path forward there, whereas maybe something like Vault isn't as clear how that would integrate in as it is now, and require a lot more manual steps, for example.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting, like to see like either there's an issue planned for it, or there's installation instructions, and we now have two projects, and it's kind of hard. It's hard for me to wrap my head around this, and also I think we have a lot of what I see. The underlying problem is there's lots of customers that just follow our installation instructions and think they're done. They never set up Elasticsearch. They never set up Grafana. They never set up these things that are manual. And I think we need to get closer to that. I think a first step would be a table that at least gives an overview.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it looks like we are missing a few things in the limitations, right? Like Grafana, for instance, we are shipping that in Omnibus. It should have been listed here. Another one that isn't listed here that should be is Mattermost as well, which they additionally now have a chart ready to go. Mattermost does as well.
Yeah,
but,
I wouldn't even make it a limit. I'm not sure we should list it under limitations because there's aspirational future things. But just having an overview, like these are all the components and this is what's installed automatically. I think that would be super helpful.
I see what you're saying, right? Not so much a comparative, but like the full list of integrations and application pieces or suite pieces, and which ones are automatic in which location, and then I link to where the documentation is regards to automatic or manual and the manual steps required.
Exactly. These are all the services that come with GitLab and or that you need with GitLab, and this is how we deal with them.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
Okay, we're at 26 after the hour.
Yeah, if no one else has any pressing last minute questions, we should go ahead and end the call. Thanks everyone.